All right, today we're getting into something that is, well, it's pretty wild when you really stop and think about it. We're talking about a fascinating and, let's be honest, provocative trend in modern politics. The surprising appeal of the leader who is, for lack of a better word, an asshole.
I mean, really think about that question. It seems to go against everything we've traditionally been told we should want in a leader, right? Things like diplomacy, tact, being agreeable. And yet, for a whole lot of voters, abrasive, even trollish behavior isn't a deal breaker. No, for some, it's actually a selling point. So what on earth is going on here?
To really get to the bottom of this, we have to explore something called the authenticity paradox. It's this situation where behavior that seems totally negative on the surface is actually seen by some people as a huge positive.
And this, right here, is the key to unlocking the whole puzzle. The support isn't for rudeness just for the sake of being rude, not at all. Instead, that rudeness is seen as a signal. It's like a code that stands for something much, much deeper and way more valuable to certain voters.
You know, to really appreciate why the abrasive leader is so appealing, we first have to understand the problem that they're seen as the solution to. And for these voters, the real issue, the real enemy, is the perfectly polished traditional politician.
You hear this phrase a lot from voters. They describe that traditional politician as someone who just tells everybody what they want to hear. This paints a picture of, a focus-grouped, scripted robot who just changes their message for every room they're in. And ultimately, that just comes across as completely fake.
So here's the central contrast, laid out plain and simple. The polished politician is seen as pandering. They say what you want to hear. The asshole politician is seen as authentic. They say what they actually think. Now, if you're a voter who values authenticity above absolutely everything else, the choice between these two becomes surprisingly clear.
And this quote just gets right to the heart of that frustration, doesn't it? That extreme caution, that constant fear of saying the wrong thing. To some people, it doesn't read as being careful anymore. It reads as a total lack of conviction. It just feels dishonest. It feels fake.
Okay, so if the polished politician is the problem, what is it that makes the abrasive ones so appealing? Let's break down exactly why this style hits home so hard for some people. When you boil it all down, the reason you hear over and over and over again in voter interviews is this one simple word: authentic. In a world that just feels full of carefully managed PR and public images, a blunt, unfiltered style, it just cuts through all that noise. And to some, it feels like a breath of fresh, honest air. So this idea of authenticity is really built on a few key things. First, being abrasive is seen as a flat-out refusal to pander. It's a rejection of all those carefully crafted, focus-grouped messages. It signals that this leader is just committed to speaking their mind, period. And this is a big one, by being willing to take the heat and face the backlash, they project this powerful image of strength.
There's actually a term for this whole phenomenon. It's called performative candor. And the idea is that this unfiltered way of speaking isn't just a personality quirk. Nope, it's a deliberate performance. It's designed to signal authenticity and to scream to voters, hey, I am different from all the rest of them.
So let's try to dig even deeper. Let's really put ourselves in the shoes of a voter who prefers this style. What does the political world actually look like from their point of view?
Wow, this quote is so incredibly revealing. The word troll is usually a massive insult, right? But listen to how it's used here. It's being flipped to describe someone you can actually trust more than a typical politician. The logic is basically, look, even if I hate what they're saying, I believe that they actually believe it. They aren't just reading lines.
What this all represents is a really major shift in what some voters value. There's this deep, deep distrust of polished language and this real hunger for what they see as the unfiltered truth. And in this new kind of political math, perceived strength becomes way more valuable than just being agreeable. For these voters, the word unfiltered has basically become a synonym for honest.
All right, let's bring all of this together. We started out with a paradox, a question that didn't seem to make sense. But now we can see how, for some voters, it's not a paradox at all. It is a perfectly logical choice.
When you lay it out step by step, the logic is surprisingly straightforward. It starts with abrasiveness as a way to reject what they see as pandering. Then, that very act of rejection is seen as proof of authenticity. And finally, in this new value system, that authenticity is simply more important than traditional politeness. Simple as that.
And this right here is probably the most important takeaway from all of this. In the minds of these voters, the choice isn't between a nice candidate and a mean one.
The real choice is between the fake candidate and the real one. And for them, well, that's no choice at all.
So all of this leaves us with a huge question to chew on. If this trend continues, if this performative candor becomes the most valuable asset in politics, what does that actually mean for our future, for our public discourse, our policies, and the very idea of what we look for in a leader? That's definitely something worth thinking about.